Let go, let go, let go.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Two Shots and the Ball, Courtside Edition. And my name's Allan April. I'm joined here today by a very special guest, the AUS MVP, AUS Athlete of the Year, and a U Sports All-Canadian DAL Tigers guard, Keevan Veinot. Keevan, thanks for joining me here. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Obviously, it's been a really weird time in people's lives right now, not being able to play basketball like you usually would. How have you been holding up during this quarantine, and have you been able to play any ball?
Things have been all right. I've definitely been missing the social aspect of things, but usually once the season's over for me, I take a little break. A genuine rest now is usually when I start going again, so I'm starting to now really notice the effect of it.
All right, and you're here in Halifax or back home at Port Williams?
I'm in Halifax for the summer.
Nice. So taking it from this weird present time we're living in, I want to throw it all the way back to the past, talking about Port Williams, Nova Scotia, little village in the valley of about 1,000 people just up the road from Wolfville and Acadia. And it's pretty crazy when you talk about basketball powerhouses across Canada. You might be looking at big cities, but Horton High in the Port Williams area has had a lot of talent roll through there, and your family has been a big part of that. Tell me a little bit about your childhood growing up in Port Williams and how basketball played a role in that. Yeah,
growing up in Port Williams, there wasn't really, now living in Halifax, there wasn't quite as much to do back in the valley. So a lot of friends that I had always played sports, and so we were always very active, whether it was playing soccer or football or basketball. But we had a little blossoming village regarding basketball, and my parents helped grow it, and there have been other tremendous assets that helped it grow just in like New-Minas and Kentville. But in Port Williams, we had people, it was like me, Jada, and Haley, who plays for Acadia, and Gage, who's at Ottawa, and Matt Ingham, who played at Acadia. Like, we had a fantastic group of people growing up there.
And you mentioned your parents playing a big role in that. People might know your twin sister, Jada, obviously a star at Acadia right now, but your parents themselves were pretty great basketball players growing up. What did they teach you growing up? And when did you first fall in love with the sport and realize you're going to follow in their footsteps, more or less?
I definitely did hear that they were very good basketball players. I have yet to see it or any video of it, but I've heard a lot of great things. Growing up, they never pressured us to play basketball, but they did. They started a program when we were young called Below the Rim, and I think I was probably 3 as well as Jada. My older sister, Jenica, would have been in year 5, and we all stuck through it. And by the time I think I was 14, I realized that I was just basketball was my favorite sport out of all the sports that I played, and I was going to stick with it.
Right on. So coming out of Horton High, you're pretty highly recruited, and obviously Acadia right down the road, but you decided to come to Dalhousie. At that time, they're coming off a three-peat and just graduated another all-star point guard who wore number 11 in Richie Kanzamata. And they had Kashar Lawrence and Jared Reed graduate, but still had a lot of talent. You personally made an impact right away, started 14 games that year, and that team was a solid team, got the first-round bye, but lost to STFX in the semifinal. What did you take away from that season, and specifically that loss in your first playoff action at the Scotiabank Center?
That was my first year. We were, I think, first or second place. We had the bye, and so that was my first game at the Scotiabank Center, I believe. And, growing up in Nova Scotia, I was there every year watching for as long as I can remember. And so my dad used to help coach Acadia, and so I was a big Acadia fan growing up because we also grew up right down the road. But by the time it was my turn to play there, it was just like this surreal moment. And we played well, but X played very well. They had a phenomenal third quarter. I think they scored 30-some points. Coach always always brings it up all the time, so it's hard to forget that. And as well as we were very good that year, and they knocked us out of playoffs, which is frustrating, but that was a big learning curve. And so coming into second year, we all had not necessarily something to prove to others, but to ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know Plato would never let you guys forget a 30-point quarter defensively.
Yeah.
So going into that second year, you're now, it's safe to say, even though you're just the second year, one of the big leaders on the team. You actually had some injuries that year, but the team did very well, finished the 3rd seed that time, and you had a way better run at the Scotiabank Center, winning your first AUS championship and then hosting nationals that year. And looking at nationals, you beat UBC in the quarters before matching up against Carleton in the semifinal, up late in that game before they pulled away with it and went on to finish 4th in the country. What did you take away from that second season and the opportunity to play at nationals for the first time and play that tough Carleton team for the first time?
Well, winning AUS and then going to nationals in Halifax was an experience of its own, regardless of how poor or how well we did. But when we got to play Carleton, it's, majority of the teams lose to Carleton before they even step on the floor. And so we just had to instill in our minds that this was our game to win. We essentially had nothing to lose. I don't think Carleton won the year before. I think Calgary did, but, they're a winning team regardless of the outcome of nationals. And so going to that game, we were just there to win.
Right on. And we're going to get back into nationals and another big matchup against Carleton shortly. But one of the things that's so impressive about you, and I know the guys have talked about this on the podcast, is even though you were a great player coming out of high school, you've improved your game noticeably every year. Your stats have gone up across the board every season. Big, do everything kind of point guard. But heading into this year, you were more of an assist man, and this year you took over much more of a scoring role. What can you say about your ability to come back better every season and how your role has changed over your 3 years with DAL?
I think coming into this year, I personally set a big goal for myself. When I met with Plato after the year last year, I didn't have a great offseason coming into my second year, but I wanted to have a great one coming into my third year. The second year, when we played Carleton, it seemed like we were a young team. We didn't have much experience. It was all of our first times, other than a couple guys who played in nationals. But coming into this year, I took it upon myself, and Coach also wanted me to take more of a leadership role. And so whether if that was scoring or passing or just grabbing rebounds, doing whatever, but I did play a more passive role in the past 2 years at DAL, and this year I had a good offseason, and I came into it just in good shape and far more aggressive. And so that translated to scoring.
Yeah, I'd say you had a good season. We talked a little bit about it, but AUS MVP, all-Canadian member, and now the AUS Athlete of the Year just this week. And from a team standpoint, this was by all means the most successful season in DAL Tigers history. You guys ran through the postseason on the road, went 10-0, 19-1 in the AUS, and 33-1 heading into the game that the guys are breaking down in this podcast, which is that AUS final championship against STFX. When you talk about STFX, that's a team that you do have some history with, as we've previously discussed. How motivated were you going into that game against STFX, knowing that not only did they eliminate you a couple years prior, but they were your only loss of the season heading into that championship?
I don't think there was any bad blood against X. I just think it was the fact that it was the AUS championship. We both wanted to win, and they also were the only team that beat us that year. And something that stood out to me was the first 2 games when we played them, we won. It was probably I think they were blowouts, and then the third game they beat us, and then the fourth game we won by probably 10, but it was a close game. And as we were walking to our benches after the game, I heard it might have been Roker. I think he said, "It's okay, we'll get them in the finals." And I heard them say that, and I was like, what an optimistic way to look at this loss. There's 5 games left in the season, and I knew they were going to come to play, and they did just that. We did battle it out long enough, but they put up a hell of a fight. We ended up getting that championship.
Yeah, I mean, that was a really exciting game. We'll talk about it a little bit more. Back and forth. They actually had a lead early in the third quarter. And then midway through the third quarter, you're leading 44-43, and Alex Carson checks in off the bench. He had started that game, but came in off the bench in the second half and came off the bench for a large portion of the season. And then he just started hitting shots from all over the place, scored 17 points in the last 15 minutes, and helped lead you guys to the AUS championship. What can you say about, that second half and also the ability for your team to be so deep and bring an all-star like Alex off the bench in that kind of situation?
When we started the year, Alex was battling this never-ending groin injury. And so he started coming off the bench, and he accepted that role. There were times when he could have started, but he accepted the fact that we were playing really well with him coming off the bench, and he didn't want to change that. And so whether if we had Alex starting or him coming off the bench, we had a core 10 guys. And so if some guys like if this lineup wasn't playing well, coach could just go 5 on, 5 off, or just make substitutions like that. And having Carson play, if he's coming off the bench, I would say he's playing more of a minor role. But I mean, Alex is like, you can't leave him open for half a second because, I mean, he'll make you pay. He knocks down those shots. And so having a team that deep and a guy like Carson take that role is just a huge push forward for us.
Yeah, I actually want to ask you a little bit more about that depth as well. You know, you were top 10 in nearly every statistical category this season, but one you weren't was minutes. You were 12th in the league in minutes per game. You know, a lot of star players are used to playing a lot of minutes and having the ball in their hands and the offense flow through them. And while it does at points, there's other points where, you know, you kind of take more of a backseat role in Coach Plato's system. How big of an adjustment has that been for you over the last few years?
It was a great adjustment. At the beginning of the year, I was playing close to 37 minutes a game, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's a long season. You start in September and you go all the way to March. You do burn out. And I had a talk with Anton and Plato about my minutes. And then we tried resting me a bit more, just not necessarily resting, but instead of playing 37 minutes a game, play 34. Or if I don't have to play 40 minutes, then I won't. And with me being on the bench, it then gives other guys that chance to take the leadership role on the floor, which was, once again, another big step to our success.
All right, so you're heading to nationals now. You know, this time in a bit of a different situation. You're the number 2 seed. You're not the host, and you're on the road in Ottawa. And in the first round, you take on a tough Ottawa team. Your old high school teammate and fellow Port Williams native, Gage Sabian. And you're able to get the win against Ottawa. How much confidence did you have heading into that hostile gym at nationals this time around?
It was unfortunate that we had to play Ottawa in the quarterfinals because they were like a top 4 team the entire year. It's just the way that the OUA worked out. But going into the game, we knew it was going to be loud. We knew it was going to be hostile. Ottawa was hosting, and they got the 7th seed, which they didn't deserve. But we came in confident, and I think it speaks for itself. We played a tremendous game, as did Ottawa, but we stuck to our game plan and ended up pulling it out in the end.
Yeah, that was a really exciting game. And then you take care of UBC, another good team in the semifinal. And it's the rematch, I guess you've been asking for. You're taking on Carleton again, this time for a national championship. You know, heading into that game, you had seen that Carleton team before. You had pushed them to their limit the year prior. What was the game plan, I guess, heading into that Carleton game and that allowed you to get such a hot start in the first half and take the lead?
You know, if you want to beat Carleton, there would be no better time to beat them than in the finals. And so it was the 1 and 2 team in the finals. I couldn't have been more happy about that. Like, if we had to play out or Carleton, I'm so glad that it was in the finals because if you want to beat them, it would have been that game. But coming into the game, we knew everything we had to do defensively, and offensively, we just had to trust what we did all year long. And we did that in the first half. And it really showed offensively. And then in the second half, they made a couple major defensive adjustments, which showed.
Yeah, a tough second half, I know. But again, you were right there until the final minute, and they were able to pull away with it. So I know that's a disappointing end of the season, but a couple months later now, when you look back at that experience, what do you think your team can take away from a national silver medal and such a fantastic season, going 36-2 overall on the campaign?
I think it was a historical season for DAL. We went, I think it was 36-2. We lost 2 games. One of them was in the national finals to the best team in the U Sport. And so I think Plato said that we were up for 37 minutes in that game, and it's a 40-minute game. And so if you don't come to play for all 40 minutes, you can't expect to win.
Great. So now looking forward, obviously we're going to hope that things start to return to normal soon and you'll be able to hit the court again with your teammates sooner than later. You know, you've won all these awards this season. You've led the team to the AUS championship and now national silver medalist. What keeps you motivated moving forward, and what are you looking to adjust personally to be able to reach that next level next season?
You know, as great as the season was for me and the team, more importantly, we still haven't gotten to that end goal. We still haven't won that national championship. And so we were like this close this year and a little bit further last year, but it sort of seems like we're getting closer and closer. And so, you know, that's something that's very motivating. losing in the championship to Carleton, if that doesn't make you want it even more, I don't know what will.
All right, so that's going to do it for us. Keevan Veinot, you can tell the man's motivated heading into his 4th year, and what a 3rd season it was. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us today, Keevan, and again, hoping things return to normal soon and you're able to hit the court again with your teammates.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you next time on Two Shots and the Ball.
Let go.